Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, 16th of December, in fact, is a very tragic day in the history of Pakistan. Whether you talk about the fall of Dhaka in 1971, almost rather exactly 50 years ago, and that was the time when we lost East Pakistan and we in fact ended up seeing another country being born that was called Bangladesh. And we ended up blaming a couple of our political leaders, perhaps one of the senior general, along with Mujibur Rehman, who happened to be the first person, or rather let it be like as if he was the father and the founding figure of Bangladesh. Now it's been 70 years, and if you look at the economy of Bangladesh, if you look at the exports of Bangladesh, if you just have a look of the kind of per capita income they have at the moment, or you look at their forex reserves, everything, every single number is a lot better than that of Pakistan. And let us consider this to be West Pakistan for the moment. But where did we go wrong and where did they go right? That is another very important question. Another important mark regarding 16th of December is another very tragic story. Exactly 7 years ago, 2014 was the year, and we got to learn around afternoon that Army Public School Peshawar was under attack by the terrorists. So later on we got to know that the military forces along with our SSG commandos, they have gone inside to rescue the young students and the teachers out there. But what we learnt later in the evening that more than 150 innocent children and teachers were brutally murdered. And that murder, because I've been there myself, I reported from there, I covered the story, it was unbelievable. Every single person in Pakistan was literally crying, because if you look at those innocent faces who lost their lives in such a brutal way, there is no other comparison of such a tragic incident. Just imagine you have left your loved ones, your kids in the school, and you got to know that the school is under a terrorist attack, and eventually those kids were killed. Many were saved also, but 150 is not a small number. So these two, in fact, incidents really shattered the entire nation. Everyone was crying, and whenever we hear this word 16th of December, this particular date, it always reflects upon two major tragedies I earlier mentioned. One was the fall of Dhaka and one was the APS incident in Peshawar. Now we'll be talking about that, but before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Pakistan Army. 16 December, a day which brings bitter and tragic memories for every Pakistani because the two tragedies, the Dhaka fall of 1971 and the Army Public School tragedy of 2014. These two tragedies magnanimously shook the emotional, ideological and political roots of Pakistan. Both incidents proved to be an eye-opener for the then ruling governmental machinery regarding the loopholes in the provision of the traditional as well as non-traditional security aspects to the citizens, which could make Pakistan's stability and security matrix at that time more comprehensive and sustainable. 16 December 2021 marks the 7th anniversary of the deadliest ever attack against young students in the country by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan in 2014, in which 147 children were brutally massacred in the Army Public School in Peshawar. And Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan call it an act of revenge against Operation Zarbias. After this event, all the governmental machineries and the Pakistani nationals on one hand mourned the insurmountable loss and on the other hand were emotionally and politically united against the terrorists and showed their unflinching commitment regarding vengeance from the culprits and eradicating terrorism by aggressively and religiously following the 20-point National Action Plan. 16 December 2021 also marks the 50th anniversary of the separation of East Pakistan. The incident, known as Fall of Dhaka, which is a very sensitive and tragic chapter in the history of Pakistan. The fall of Dhaka was a tragedy attributed the amalgamation of Indian historical and traditional sinister role by financially, militarily, and diplomatically supporting the secession, as well as the role of the then ruling elite's incapacity of balancing the traditional and human security aspects provisions between East and West Pakistan. During this conflict, India created a guerrilla resistance movement dubbed as Mukti Bahini, comprising Indian agents, extremist Hindu, and outlawed Bengalis. The militant groups carried out massive atrocities against the Bengali population, including killings, rapes, loot, and plunder, whereas Indian media falsely blamed Pakistan Army for all such activities. The terror group also indiscriminately targeted the pro-Pakistan population of East Pakistan, reportedly killing 66,000 non-Bengalis. Following the creation of Bangladesh, Pakistan was deprived of being the Muslim state with the largest population and area size. Though Pakistan has come a long way in eradicating the violent extremism and terrorism, and in this journey, Pakistan has faced many losses in terms of life losses as well as economic and social challenges. Still, there are many areas, specifically in terms of the community security domain, which are needed to be addressed so that the external forces cannot manipulate the deprived citizens of Pakistan and again try to shatter the stability matrix of Pakistan.
Well, that was a report prepared by our production team, and in fact, they were throwing light on the significance of this very important date and day, 16th of December. Now, quickly, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us on my right is Javed Siddiq Saab. Javed Siddiq Saab needs no introduction as a senior analyst and one of the, I would say, mentors of ours also regarding journalism. So, thank you so much for your time. And we have with us Brigadier Tipu Sultan Saab. Again, needs no introduction. He's a senior defense analyst. Brigadier Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. And we also have with us on Skype Dr. Hamid Khan Saab, who is joining us from United Kingdom. A pleasure to have you, Hamid Khan Saab, and it's great to see you once again in our program. But let me start off from you, Javed Siddiq Saab. Let's talk about the fall of Dhaka first, sir, because this date has, as I earlier mentioned, a lot of significance. I still remember, sir, because my father himself was a prisoner of war. I was born in March 72, and this tragedy took place in December, winters. And eventually, sir, we ended up losing East Pakistan, which later on became Bangladesh. But, sir, when we do the comparison now, even in today's date, sir, I think Bangladesh is doing a lot better than Pakistan as far as economy is concerned, as far as the utilization of their geopolitics is concerned, sir, geostrategic area, or you talk about geoeconomics. I think they have done it. Now, sir, looking at the current situation, since we are talking about a tragedy that occurred exactly 50 years ago, sir, and this is perhaps, I think, I would say the golden jubilee, let it be like that for people in Bangladesh. Yes, that's what I'm saying, sir. They are celebrating and marking their independence, their 50th year of independence, and we are talking about a tragedy. Let's start off from there, sir.
Well, it was a massive tragedy for the Pakistani people and the nation. And it didn't happen suddenly. It had a history behind it. And unfortunately, the relationship between West and East Pakistan during those 30 years of independence, post-independence years, we didn't have very cordial relations and relations based on trust. And unfortunately, the East Pakistani brothers, they looked on West Pakistan's leadership with suspicion. And they always complained that they were being exploited economically and they were being treated as if they are a colony of West Pakistan and things like this, which was not true. In fact, this was exploited. I mean, this distrust between West and East Pakistan leadership was exploited by Indians to the maximum. And I think it all triggered from the language issue when the Quaid-e-Azam, founder of Pakistan, declared Urdu as the national language, and there was a reaction in East Pakistan on this. And subsequently, while Pakistani leadership, both East and West Pakistan leaders were trying to frame a constitution for Pakistan, the principle of parity was introduced. That meant that the people of, the representative of East Pakistan and West Pakistan would be equal in the parliament. That was called the principle of parity, although the Bengalis or the East Pakistanis were in majority. So these were the two things on which the Bengali leadership, the leadership of East Pakistan, exploited the situation, and the whole propaganda war against West Pakistan was fueled by Indian intelligence agency RA and other agencies. So that actually climaxed into the 1971 tragedy.
We were not aware of what was brewing out there, sir?
I think we were aware.
But no concrete steps were taken.
I think measures should have been taken to allay the fears of East Pakistanis. And Pakistani industrialists like Aswani and others, they had massively
Swahani's family, in fact.
Yeah, and invested in East Pakistan. Jute mills which were set up in East Pakistan were by the West Pakistani industrialists, whereas the propaganda was that the entire foreign exchange is being invested in West Pakistan. West Pakistan is being industrialized at the cost of East Pakistan. So this was the propaganda which was actually triggered against Pakistan, West Pakistan. Distrust reached at its apogee and apex in 1970-71. And unfortunately, some other incidents like national calamities, cyclones, they hit very frequently East Pakistan because of its geographical situation. And that too was blamed on West Pakistan, that West Pakistan was doing nothing to basically counter these national calamities results. And the funds which Pakistan was getting from foreign sources were being eaten up by the West Pakistani leadership, and it is not being spent on East Pakistan. These were the things which were basically exploited.
Neglect, negligence.
That was on the part of the West Pakistan leadership, but I think it was hugely exploited by our enemy, the Indian government, and they were very actively involved in destabilizing the situation in East Pakistan. So that ultimately our mistakes, political mistakes, economic ignorance of East Pakistan, plus the Indian hand which was being played in East Pakistan, resulted in this tragedy of 16 December 1971.
Now that is something of prime concern. Pranay Saab, you yourself, you have been a part of the war, sir, and you understand about the details. Military was blamed, General Yahya in particular, sir, the chief, and then a lot of people also blame Bhutto Saab for this, that perhaps if the man was able, this Mujibur Rahman was able to get that number, which was I think almost 97% of the seats that he had in fact won. So why not him? Initially they said, well, it's about the population. Later on they said it's about the size. Even the same issue is still continuing, sir. When you look at the issues in Balochistan, perhaps huge area but less population as compared to Punjab, smaller but more densely populated. Sir, have we learned anything in these 50 years, or we are still stuck in the past?
Well, there have been some positives in Pakistan, I must say that, but largely strategically, forethought wise, I think we lag behind. Whatever the reasons, the tactical reasons, at the end of the golden decade, as they said, of Ayub Khan, 1968, and the politics that were played and the military strategy that was played was absolutely negative, and they did not realize what are the environments, what they need to do and what is the threat. A lot of people blame India, a lot of people blame Mukti Bahini and all that. I will tell you that if you are an enemy and if you are looking for an opportunity, and if you get an easy opportunity and pounce on it and gain strategically, you would not blame your enemy entirely that they did this, and the Russians did that, and the Mukti Bahini was trained in India. What have we done? The important is that the enemy will do whatever it takes him to do. We did not exploit the situation in 1962 when the Chinese attacked the Indians in Nepal and Ladakh and all that, and we still talk about it as a missed opportunity. So, there are the time and space factors is so important in higher strategy and posturing and for political thought and all that. We missed all that, and then what ensued out of this situation was that there was a political betrayal in the entire story. The role of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto is very much questionable. So much time has passed, a lot has been written from the Indian side, from Pakistani side, and you know, nobody can refute the role of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto as to why did he not accede to the majority of the seats that the Awami League had won. Because the democracy trend in Pakistan was not there. We had the elections, and if we had, you know, respected those seats that the Bengalis won, the situation could have been different. And on the military side, there was no clear policy from the general headquarters. They wanted to defend every inch of the land. They did not see the environment. They did not see the situation. You just can't pass an order just like that. You have to know what is the size of attacking forces, what is the air situation, what is the international situation, and what do we get. And you know, to earn a ceasefire from the General Assembly and the Security Council, we sent our foreign minister over there, who was called by Yahya Khan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and he tore all those people, and we said he's a great hero, he wants to fight for 1,000 years. But you don't want to fight 1,000 years in UN, United Nations, when you are representing a country. Over there, you're supposed to have
the damage was already done by them.
You have to have a political solution over there. So I will tell you that in the situation is this: the media, the people, the political parties, the behavior of the provinces is such that you know, one feels very sorry about it, that the situation is like this, it still persists and we have not learned much about it. However, I will tell you that despite our massive setback politically and militarily in 1971, we still, you know, got up to build up a force against India. And we fought very successfully the threat from on our eastern western borders. And the insurgency that ensued out of Afghanistan for decades, sponsored by the CIA and RAW and India and all that, we blunted that. We lost our dear ones, we lost our children, we lost our military people, we lost our policemen, we lost people, teachers, universities, mosques and everybody. But we weathered the storm. It is still simmering. It has not gone out. The threat is very much there as yet. We are not over the hill as yet. Pakistan still stands as a powerful nation regionally. There is no doubt about that. You know, India in 1971 had a massive victory which had great strategic implications. But Pakistan, despite its political troubles, despite its security environments, a lot of people talk about the Bangladesh progress, as you said in your preamble. Of course, I agree with that. But there is something called environments. If you know, if Bangladesh is surrounded by the countries like we are surrounded, and the type of relationship that we have from the West and the expectation thereof, and their inner desire to do away with our strategic assets, and their inner desire for Pakistan to behave in a certain manner. They have been working on our political leaders. They wanted Pakistan to behave in a certain manner. Pakistan has ceded to the Western demands, but not entirely. Pakistan had its own policy. Pakistan had its own security plan, and Pakistan has its own system which is working, although not 100%. But we should not be dismayed, we should not be disappointed.
One quick comment, Progressa, before I go to our friend Hamid Khan Saab. So, tell us about this story, or a propaganda, let me put it this way, that 3 million Bangladeshis were killed, and they blame the military for that. Do you think that actually triggered, because that never happened? 3 million is not a joke, sir.
The major pillar of Indian propaganda was that the Pakistan army is raping women, they are killing innocent people, blah, blah,
The
blah.
Indians tried to capitalize on this.
Instead of that, when the Indian army entered Bangladesh, they were on the rampage. They raped women, they looted property, they did all sorts of things. But Awami
And
League,
blamed us.
and blamed us. But the Awami League could not say that you are doing that, because their strategic orientation, their aim was something different, to get independence and not to offend India. But the actual story is that Pakistan army never did that. Our army is never known to have said that, did that anywhere in the world.
Mere
anywhere in the
propaganda.
world. Absolute
Absolutely.
propaganda.
Now,
Absolute.
Hamid Khan Saab, now let me come to you. First of all, sir, your take on this very, very tragic day and date, sir, 16th of December, since we're talking about 50 years have passed. Bangladesh is a separate country, sir. We look upon Mujibur Rahman as a traitor, whereas the Bangladeshi people look upon him as the great founding father of their nation, sir. Perceptions are different, but reality should be what people should know about. Your take, sir.
I would say, I mean, today is again a reminder for us that what mistakes we did, we need to learn that as well. But on the other hand, we can clearly say what we learned from it as well. I would say there are two main things. One, in 1953, in Karachi, Allama Mashriqi said in a public speech that he can see that there is a possibility of separation of East Pakistan due to the cunning conspiracies by Indians, because taking the advantage of geographically, distance between current Bangladesh and Pakistan. In East and West, Pakistan was not geographically attached. So he warned the nation and the leadership of the both countries that they need to be more conscious. They need to bring more harmony between the both Pakistans, so that this nation can stay together, because he could see the conspiracies from India and enemies of Pakistan. One. Secondly, I always say that if you want to look at the classic example of victim of hybrid war, then it started in 1970 by blaming Pakistan army for such rapes and killings and all that. It was a part of a false propaganda which we were learned that Hitler did in Second World War. But India used the same tactics against Pakistan army, and it created so much unrest in the East Pakistan as well, that they started to believing it. And I would like to remind you, in 1972-73, when Mujibur Rahman sent a letter to British Prime Minister and complaining about these claims and atrocities, they did the investigation, and they told Mujibur Rahman that according to their investigations, there was no incidents of rapes by the Pakistan army, there are no massacre killings by the Pakistan army. So it was proven by an international report in 1972-73 by the British Prime Minister to Mujibur Rahman. So these are the realities which we need to tell to our nation. Yes, there was mistake, but on the other hand, it was very hard geographically to keep two countries attached as well, while we have to go through the waters of the enemy. And last thing, that we were again betrayed by America. I'm always say that we need to learn the lessons. That we were waiting for the seventh vessel, naval vessel from America, which never came to rescue or to calm down or to did any kind of agreement between Indian and Pakistani forces. So America was waiting for all that to happen. So these are the facts which we learn and which we need to tell our new generation, because there is a confusion between new generation that perhaps there was atrocities by Pakistan army, which is a complete false propaganda. It is a Indian cunning conspiracy which won against us. But I always say on Indian channels as well, and I say on Pakistani channel, that now the Pakistan has learned from its mistake, and now I believe that we will not be a victim of any conspiracy like that, because Pakistan has learned its lesson, and we need to keep learning on it. And we need to have our eyes open against the conspiracies of our enemy.
Hamid Khan Sahab, is it wise to blame the former Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto or General
No.
Yahya Khan or Mujibur
No.
Rahman for this tragedy?
I would say that rather than blaming it to anyone, I just think two things. Yes, there on the basis on the results of the election, yes, Bhutto should have given a fair chance to Mujibur Rahman. There is no doubt about it. But on the other hand, there was so many other elements going on at that time due to our martial law situation and due to the situation in uprising with the name of Mukti Bani and other reports which were already confirming that. And last thing is that, I mean, we can partly blame Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, we can partly blame Mujibur Rahman, but we cannot point out one finger. Yes, I agree with sir that that was not the right decision from Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in United Nations, the way he tore up the papers and came out. Do you know what happened? Pakistan had 60 minutes to speech on that topic on that day by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and he wasted 55 minutes. And Indian correspondent and represented spoke for 2 hours in the same day against Pakistan in United Nations to convince the rest of the world to bring build up its own case. So actually it was the thing which he tried to do, making himself a hero, actually fall back against us, that India spoke double against us in our absence, and the world was convinced once you are speaking about the topic. So I think that was a mistake, but not wholly one person can be blamed. It was entire situation. It was a conspiracy. It was again our failure.
Whenever a plane crashes, and Brigadier Saab, since you've been a pilot yourself, so there is a chain of events. Could be weather, could be fatigued pilot, could be a malfunction, put together. At the end of the day, the plane crashed. Now let's move on, sir. Let's talk about. So,
when the plane crashes, when the plane is in emergency, everybody looks up to the captain of the aircraft. Look at that captain which landed in River Hudson. I will tell you that the Ottoman defeat around First World War was massive. They lost Jerusalem, they lost the Arabian Peninsula, they lost all territories. And the Allied in around 1921-22 gathered all forces of the world and attacked Turkey. But there was a leader there. There was a captain there called Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. They wanted to enter the Dardanelles, and they wanted to snatch the right of the Turkish people to own the Abnai Dardanelles, which is called which goes into the Black Sea, because on both sides is Turkey. One side is Istanbul, the other side is Anatolia. So they wanted to capture that, and they wanted to get Jerusalem back to Europe. But he withstood that attack and defeated the entire world over there. I will tell you, when our CGS visited General F.S.K. Lodi, who was later Governor of Balochistan, he told me himself, he said, I visited Turkey and they took me to the Battle of Gallipoli, which Mustafa Kemal Ataturk fought. And he said that he asked the conducting officer, who was a major from Turkish army, that you've lost so much of blood, you pulled off such a great victory over here, why don't you have a monument here? And the young Turk replied to the general, CGS of Pakistan Army, General, walk softly on this soil. Every inch is a monument.
they have laid their lives.
We laid our life over there. In 1971, we lacked a captain. We lacked a political captain, and we lacked a military captain. Yahya Khan, we all know, was not in full control. We know that General Niazi, AAK Niazi, Amir Abdullah Khan Niazi, his performance was lackluster, in fact dismal, and that year and that date of 16 December 1971 brought us shame, which is going to live with us. We have to redeem it. The good thing is that the fight is not over as yet. The fight is not over.
Perhaps it was a battle that we lost? but not the war.
Not the war.
The fight is not
And
over,
the trailer of which was Balakot when we responded them. So
I think the fight is not over, but that fight continues in the sense that the Indians are out to destabilize this Pakistan, the rest of Pakistan that we have. You know, they are hatching conspiracies, engineering
So
conspiracies.
that is going to continue,
But you know, we have to be very vigilant against these things. You have mentioned before we started the program about Balochistan.
yes,
They are massively involved in destabilizing Balochistan.
yes,
They are also, we must be very careful about what the Indians can do through Afghanistan with us, although we are very careful and very vigilant. But these conspiracies
They will
are
continue,
still
sir.
there. They will
They will
continue,
not
and
sit
we have
silent,
to
yes?
be very watchful.
Now, Javed Sahab, let's talk about 2014 incident, sir. Something, sir, which I just cannot forget. I've been there, sir, and I saw what happened there. I met the students, I met the teachers, and sir, everyone had a story to share, sir. What all they went through, it's totally abnormal, sir, because this is something which we have never seen. Yes, we do understand that one student on his personal agenda ends up killing 5-6 students, or perhaps a teacher in the United States of America. That's a very common phenomenon. But sir, an organized terrorist activity on innocent children as old as 6 and 7 years, they were brutally massacred, sir, throughout that whole area, sir. Whether you talk about the auditorium or you talk about the classes. And there were certain stories that I wish I could share with the public, but I cannot, honestly speaking. So then we got to know that, you know, our then military chief, General Sharif, he went to
Rahil Sharif.
Rahil Sharif, he went to Afghanistan and he met the leadership there, and later on we got to know that 20-point agenda, national action plan. What's going on, sir?
Well, I think Pakistan has witnessed a lot of incidents of terrorism ever since we became an ally of the United States in the war against terror in Afghanistan. We have seen innocent people being killed, you know, markets being blasted by these terrorists, TTP and other terrorists. And we have seen a lot of bloodshed since 9/11. Ever since Pakistan was forced to become an ally of the United States in the war against terror. But this incident, the APS incident, was the most barbaric one, in which the innocent school children were targeted. And the way you have described and you have painted a picture, a very gloomy picture of what happened there on the 16th of December of 2014. So that's the most tragic incident of the series of terrorist attacks in Pakistan. And actually that united the entire nation. And after this you know, attack on APS, Army Public School in Peshawar, and such a brutal attack against the innocent children, which resulted in the death of 150 school children and along with their teachers. I think the action plan, the national action plan that you mentioned, and the visit of the then army chief to Afghanistan, talking to the Afghan leadership and all that, that actually united the entire nation against terrorists. And operations were launched by the military to actually wipe out and annihilate all the hideouts of the terrorists within our territory, in our you know, western areas. So I think that woke up the entire nation, and we lived up to the challenge of that time. And I think since then we have military has undertaken so many operations against the terrorists, and they have been able to eliminate them. And after that, 2014 incident, the Pakistan Army and the anti-terrorist activities of various law enforcing agencies has been able to eliminate terrorists and their sleeping cells from various parts of the country, and particularly the sleeping cells and the IOBs, the intelligence-based operations. They were conducted by the military and other allied forces, and I think we have been able to eliminate terrorism from our country since that incident of 2014.
But Javed Sahab, military is assigned to perform a certain task because they are trained very differently. But don't you think that the political commitment, unfortunately, whether you talk about PMLN or you talk about PTI or you talk about Pakistan People's Party or other religious political parties or even MQM, certain parties had a very stiff stance against the Taliban, MQM, Pakistan People's Party, or ANP, let me put it this way. But the rest always had a tilt. Now we are getting to know that the government wants to negotiate and talk to those TTP members who were involved in such heinous crimes. Do you think that's a wise decision, sir?
Well, I think this is being criticized massively in our media by our intellectuals, by even military experts, as to whether this is justifiable to have dialogue with
What about those parents who have lost their kids?
TTP. And these voices are being raised, voices of concern are being raised by the parents of those young innocent children who were killed in this tragic and barbaric incident. So I think there is a lot of criticism on this decision of negotiating a peace deal with the TTP, and the 1 month or 2 months ceasefire agreement is already over, and we have seen attacks are being carried out against our forces, and particularly police people who are accompanying the teams which are administering the polio vaccination. They have been killed. Yes. And I think they are active again, TTP is active again. I don't think it will be easy for our leaders, both civilian and military, to have a negotiated settlement with the TTP, whose hands are soaked in the blood of the innocent Pakistanis, specifically these school children.
So starting from Peshawar all the way to Karachi and all around, sir, there is not even a single city which is safe, unfortunately, because of these
and because
TTP
of
characters.
the TTP.
Yes.
Because of TTP.
Well, there are certain things which have combined against Pakistan. There is a term used called fifth columnist. Those people who side with the enemy to fend terrorism or arson or looting or insurgency in a country. We saw that in 1975 in Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's time. It was coming from Afghanistan, India and Russia combined. And then we massively saw it during the two great powers invasion in Afghanistan. Now the TTP is basically housed right now in Afghanistan. And the Taliban are known to have said that they will not allow any terrorism on foreign soil from Afghanistan territory. But the situation in Afghanistan is such that I have my doubt if the Afghan Taliban are in complete control of the situation over there. They have administrative problems, they have factionalism within the Taliban ranks. The Shomali Ittihad, the Northern Alliance is still working its way through the auspices of Indians as always. And there is IS Khorasan and ISK and ISIS and everybody. If they combine, they form a formidable threat to the Afghan Taliban. Now what happened in Pakistan was that there were political compromises in the shape of various political organizations or terrorist organizations, we call them, from Waziristan and from elsewhere in Swat and Karachi. The MQM was functional at the behest of the Indians, everybody knows that. Nawaz Sharif never took the name of Kulbhushan Yadav, and the soft corner and everything that happened. Unfortunately,
I had to even push him to talk about Kashmir issues, sir, in the UN.
No, he refused.
That is also a part of history.
No, unfortunately, the state mechanism has not gelled together. The political side, the judiciary, the law enforcement agencies. You establish military courts, and there is a political outcry on that, rightly so, wrongly so.
Sir, we have witnessed during the time of Chaudhry Iftikhar, who was the chief of the
Supreme Court Chief Justice.
He was the Chief Justice, and interestingly, sir, during his time, I mean, not even one person was convicted, honestly.
And then, for this reason, I think the military started
Having their own courts?
courts
their own
and
court.
convicted these
And
terrorists.
Peshawar
Exactly,
High
sir.
Court, it is replete in the print media and electronic media and all that. So unfortunately, when you have this kind of a massive threat from across the border and a big country supporting that and a world superpower coaxed with that, you need to have the national cohesion inside your own country. If you don't, you are aggravating the situation. And that resulted in the perpetuation of people being killed. You know, the heart goes out, bleed, and it's so sad, the 16th December. On top of that, this school incident, heartbreaking.
Sir, you
How
talk
would
about
you
only Pindi, sir.
how would
Every
you
Pindi camp in particular, sir, every single crossing is named after a Shaheed, sir. Starting from a Jawan to a 3-star general, sir. That is what Pindi
It will keep
camp
That is
haunting.
what we have lost.
This incident, unfortunately, will keep haunting our nation for a long time to come.
Obviously,
You go to
you cannot forget it.
the roundabout of the district courts in Rawalpindi, and there's a whole wall depicting the Shaheed of police.
Yes, sir.
You know, it is not that how many sons we are going to lose for Pakistan. For Pakistan, we all can lose our life. For Pakistan, we can do anything. But the point is that the shahadat of a shaheed is for the country and has to bear fruits. The people who have killed all these people, if they are released by the courts, if the system does not provide justice, if the political parties do not gel together, if the security agencies are doubted by the political people and a section of the public.
Sir, there has to
You
be
know,
there has to be a proper collective effort, sir.
Absolutely. I'm not blaming any institution, but the situation on ground is that any Pakistani will tell you that we need cooperation amongst each other.
But I think
And
despite these challenges, as Brigadier
Please, sir.
Sir was pointing out, our law enforcement agencies, specifically the armed forces, have been able to meet this challenge very effectively.
So, but one part of the total society.
Exactly. But you know, for a long period of time, we were reluctant to take action against these terrorists who were actually being bred on our own soil. And they are taken refuge there in the western part of our country, in this part of the border.
So, that was the
but
time we
I
talked
will
about
just
Operation
before
Rahe
the time
Operation.
finishes,
So, I have to go to.
I'll just take 1 minute. You see, the countries of the world fought terrorism and failed. Pakistan succeeded. Pakistan armed forces succeeded. Pakistan's various institutions succeeded. Even police have lost a lot of people. And I think we should be proud of our system. Yes, the armed forces work day out and day night. Their training, their mission orientation, their duties across Balochistan, across FATA, across the borders, the Durrani line, and Kashmir, and all that. It is fantastic. I am from the organization. I can tell you honestly that we are trained very properly. We are mission oriented. And
but as I said,
my request
only
is-
military can accomplish a certain task, but the nation has to stand behind them.
Absolutely.
And there has to be a collective political effort.
When you go to
That
when
is-
you go to USA as a soldier, people will come and shake hands with their soldiers and they say, "Thank you for your service."
Exactly, for your services and for
Thank
laying
you.
down your lives for the national cause. Now coming to you, Hamid Khan Saab, 2014, 16th of December, 150 innocent children were brutally murdered by the TTP. And now we are talking about talks with TTP, which is not generally accepted by the majority of the Pakistani people. Sir, your take on that?
Faisal, one thing about 2014 tragedy, that it will remain as the unforgettable day for the nation forever, and the nation will be under the debts of the blood of our martyred kids and teachers and whosoever was martyred in that incident. But on the other hand, I still say that since 2014 till now, there are so many, attacks again happened, and our political leadership was very much reluctant to actually straight away point out the real hands behind these tragedies, and that was India. Indian conspiracy. When we talk about TTP, TTP is working as an Indian proxy in Pakistan against Pakistan's state and against the people of Pakistan. Why don't, I mean, unfortunately, I have to say that, I mean, in 2014, whatever the political government was, we were reluctant to straight away point out the names. Yes, our armed forces went even into Afghanistan, targeted the perpetrators, the killers, and they killed them. Nation needs to know that even in TTP at that time, whatever the leadership was, if they took the responsibility, they were being chased by the Pakistan security forces. They've been brought to justice. Nation needs to know that. On the other hand, if this TTP is still sponsored and want to work as a proxy of India, then there is no question of dialogue. There should not be any dialogues with them. Rather than they need to bring to justice again for their wrongdoings. But again, because there must be some elements even in this TTP who are misguided, and if they want to talk about it, they need to surrender first. They need to accept the constitution of the country first. They need to ask for the pardon of what they did,
So
and
TTP
then if
members, and you
anybody is
expecting them
involved
to
in it,
surrender,
they need to bring the
and you
justice.
expecting them to change
Without
their
justice,
behavior,
there should not
that is not going to happen, sir.
Actually, they are a pawn in the hands of the foreign powers.
Absolutely, sir.
And they are actually.
This is the easy money they have, and that's the only
Yes.
thing they know.
And I think unless these foreign powers are not stopped from providing them assistance,
Sir, who's going to stop them? That's $1 million question. I think the only thing which eventually comes in my mind, sir, is that we need to put our own house in order first.
Absolutely.
And it's a very huge statement, but you have to see what can be done and how it should be done, and it should be continued. You know, you can't have a U-turn as far as your policies are concerned, sir. Being an extremist, whether it's a Hindu or a Muslim, it's equal to me, sir. If we blame India for killing innocent Kashmiris, then we should be able to pinpoint even towards the Muslims, so-called the Muslims, who are killing our innocent children and innocent people. But anyway, Hamid Khan Sahab, thank you so much, sir, for your participation. Grace Saab, was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Javed bhai, for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this particular Thursday. Now we'll be having this transmission on the OIC issue, and that is going to continue from tomorrow till Sunday. And you'll be seeing us, and stay tuned with PTV World to get more info about that particular huge, I would say, happening that is going to take place in Islamabad. Khuda Hafiz.